Hello, everyone, esteemed listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast. Well, maybe not. We are returning today as Seaweed Brain, a Kane Chronicles podcast. Today is the day that we are finally going to open up and read the first two chapters of the Kane Chronicles, The Red Pyramid. So stick around. We're back to book club.
Entrando em contato com atendimento ao cliente. Para muitas pessoas é um jeito fácil de arruinar um bom dia, mas na Zendesk nós deixamos a experiência do cliente melhor. Melhor para sua avó, melhor para o seu vendedor preferido de flores, melhor para o cara do apartamento 3A, melhor para você, melhor para todos. Porque enquanto alguns dizem que o cliente sempre tem razão, nós dizemos que o cliente é sempre humano. E como seres humanos, queremos fazer algo melhor para todos nós. Zendesk, experiência do cliente com IA desenvolvida para humanos.
Before we begin today, we wanted to say a special thank you and shout out to our sustaining patrons, Olympus Weekly, Izzy, James, Justin, and Dayton. Thank you so much for supporting the show. You too can become a patron at patreon.com/seaweedbrain. Seaweed Brain, the Duat edition. I need time to workshop this. Seaweed Brain.
Live from the Duat, yeah.
Seaweed Brain live from the Duat. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you all listened to our Kane Chronicles intro episode last week and picked up a copy of The Red Pyramid from your library, or downloaded it on Libby, or you got the audiobook, or maybe even you went to your used bookstore and you found a gorgeous hardcover copy. I actually do also really like the paperback covers of these books, though. I feel like they're very retro. So hopefully you picked those up and you started reading chapters 1 and 2. We were actually just talking before this call started and we were like, 2 chapters is kind of too little. We might have to switch to 4 chapters an episode. But for now, for time's sake, because Erica has a lot going on in their life, we're on chapters 1 and 2 today, and we have a very special guest joining Carter and I. Real live certified British person, Fran from the Best Damn Camp, is here. Hi, Fran.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I am doing okay, not too bad. Being British, which I am sorry. And I apologize for all British existence, but I am the certified, so I am connected in some way. And the irony being that the chapters that I came on for are the ones to do with British colonialism, for stealing shit from other places.
Would you say you're a massive fan of this series that people tend to sleep on?
Without question, yes. I am appalled by the Royal community for the lack of respect on the Kane's names.
Yeah, and aside from, the obvious difference between the mythological pantheons at play in these books, what do you think really separates Kane Chronicles and makes it unique as one of Rick's series?
Honestly, probably the best character relationships developed in this series, just entirely. The sibling dynamic is the best sibling dynamic in the entire series. Store Brothers, eat your hearts out. And Heroes of Olympus wishes it had this level of character connection. And I wish that there was this level of development of relationships, because their acquaintances, this is a group of friends.
Wow, yes.
I think I will second that. When we're talking specifically about the dynamics between the collaborators, friends, co-workers situation, and it's shorter. We only have 3 books really to establish this, and realistically we only have 2 books to establish a lot of those relationships. And I do think you're right that there's a much more fleshed out, lived in dynamic between the teenagers trying to save the world.
Yeah.
There's also maybe arguably fewer characters to worry about creating real dynamics between.
Yeah, at least in the first book.
All right. I think that it's time for us to perhaps dive into the dedication and the warning to all my librarian friends, champions of books, true magicians in the House of Life. Without you, this writer would be lost in the Duat. Maybe that's what it should have been. Seaweed Brain lost in the Duat. Seaweed Brain beyond the Duat.
We'll keep thinking about it. Librarians are important. Shout out to librarians. I don't know about anyone else's story. I think that I actually first encountered these books because probably a lot of people have said this, the Sea of Monsters was often on a shelf kind of towards the front of the library. And so people picked it up and then were a little bit confused. And were wait, this is the second one. What's up? What's tea? And then they find the Lightning Thief and then begin. But all of which is to say, I do think it is actually true that librarian recommendations have done a lot of work historically in the journey of these books. Rick Riordan's life as a novelist. But then also, I think generally, like, if you're like an elementary school student, like the way that you find good books for the most part is through the librarian. Middle grade books I think a great debt to them. Abbott Elementary is currently doing a librarian arc. It's great.
Oh
We
my
love
gosh,
librarians.
I'm super behind. All right, and then we go into the warning. Warning. The following is a transcript of a digital recording. In certain places, the audio quality was poor, so some words and phrases represent the author's best guesses. Where possible, illustrations of important symbols mentioned in the recording have been added. Background noises such as scuffling, hitting, and cursing by the two speakers have not been transcribed. The author makes no claims for the authenticity of the recording. It seems impossible that the two young narrators are telling the truth, but you, the reader, must decide for yourself.
I love it. It's new to the world of the Realmverse, and it's just a very innovative way to explain why these stories are being told in first person and why we're getting a talking to the reader element of the story.
Yeah.
Should we dive into chapter 1? We're in Carter's perspective.
Yeah, my boy.
Yay, Carter! Kick us off with Carter.
This was a big deal when I was younger. I think I remember when opening this book and being like, wait, what? I didn't know that other people did this. This is wild.
I was just thinking about how there's another Carter in our class, and you were like, no, absolutely not, and tried to fight them.
There are several Carters. I think that if we were to rank the Carters of the world and of fictional worlds, I think it would go, well, obviously Beyonce, number 1. I would put Carter Kane top five. I think definitely above Jay-Z, above Lil Wayne, maybe roughly on par with Jimmy, the peanut farmer president, who did Habitat for Humanity.
The peanut farmer president who had to give up his peanut farm in order to become president because it was too much of a conflict of interest.
You know, I'm sorry to Carter Kane. I think I'm gonna have to come out as a little bit of a Jimmy Carter apologist. I think Jimmy Carter gets one leg up on Carter Kane, but Carter Kane close, I guess 3rd place then in this ranking.
I don't know how to say that this is not the first conversation I've had about Jimmy Carter in the last 3 days.
Maybe that's a good poll question for this episode.
Oh yeah.
Rank your Carters.
Rank your Carters.
Anyway, chapter 1 is death. We open in Carter Kane's perspective, if you will. Carter Kane is holding the audio recording device, narrating into it. I think this is where we have the strongest parallel to the original Percy Jackson series, because it is clear, second person, I'm giving you instructions, listener. But it's stronger. He specifically is telling you to go find a specific locker and use a specific combination. The framing narrative of Percy Jackson is closest to, maybe an older acquaintance / friend telling you some whack stuff happened to me. Let me tell you about how all that went down. Whereas this is a recruitment. These are specific instructions for you to follow, to join up, to get practical information that you are expected to use, as opposed to, information about how you should not be using any information and should be running away and hiding and putting on weird smells so that you can avoid monsters. But we have the instructions. You're supposed to go and find the locker in the school, unlock it, prepare for life to get interesting. We also, at the end of this, get our first, I would say, piece of texture in the way that the recording is done. There are a few paragraphs before the break. And at the end of that section, at the very beginning of the novel, we have Sadie cutting in off screen, if you will, saying you need to hurry it up, change. You're done with this part, move on to the next part. And this is something that we'll see a lot throughout the novel. This very medium dependent way of getting the sibling interactions into the book. This is the kind of thing that we wouldn't be able to have with Percy Jackson because the framing device is a little more vague. Mm-hmm. We don't know how Percy is telling a story. Is it conversational? Is it a voice recording? Is it written down? Whereas in this one, it's crystal clear. So we're allowed to flesh things out in these ways. You can imagine Sadie sitting next to him as he's doing this, leaning over from whatever she's doing, yelling at him, and then going back to whatever she's doing, and then he continues the recording. Mm-hmm. It's nice texture. I'm already excited for how this device is going to play out.
Mm-hmm. The backstory of Carter traveling the world with his dad and not really having a home versus Sadie growing up with their grandparents in London is very interesting because it immediately sets us in, okay, so we're in London, we're not in the United States like we were with the Percy Jackson series, and so we aren't being rooted in this specific American identity for the first time. But it is still Christmas, which is interesting.
Yes.
Even as we are dealing now with Egyptian mythology. We're still layering that on top of the modern.
Yeah, it's like a family day, which is the actual setup
Family
for what's
day.
happening. Julius, Carter and Sadie's father, only has 2 visitation days every year with Sadie, and this is one of them because it is a holiday.
So we find out in this section as well from Carter that Sadie lives in London and he stays with his dad because there was a custody battle between his dad and the grandparents, and the grandparents got Sadie and his dad got him, and they're only allowed to see Sadie twice a year. And my whole thing was always, what is the other day of the year?
Yeah.
Is there a British holiday in June?
Tell us every single holiday that exists in England in the summer.
In the summer. Okay, I can actually do that. My calendar tells me. We have Whit Sunday. I don't actually know what that is, but that's in May. In June, we have Father's Day, actually. We have Father's Day.
That would make
I
sense.
think that's it. That would make sense.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
As far as I'm aware, it's never said, but it'd be interesting if that was the case. But the thing that, I remember like reading this, but kind of getting into it more on my own podcast and YouTube and stuff, is the grandparents suck because they are very clearly racist.
Yes, that is immediate off the bat. Not only did they fight for Sadie and they don't really care much about Carter, but they don't say hello to Carter, right? When he shows up at the place.
Doesn't say hello. In fact, he's pretty sure he hears the words, "Don't let them in."
Yeah. It's wild. I think I remember as a kid a little bit flagging that and being like, oh, wow, that's a lot. But then upon rereading it, I feel like this is marking a clear departure for Rick and different kinds of stories than perhaps he was focusing on in the past. It's very striking, but also like lived in detail about their family dynamics there.
Yeah.
Also, I think like if you're like a kid of that age, this is the kind of thing where you would read it and it would like change the way that you think about perhaps your family dynamics or the family dynamics of a friend.
Yeah, there's a little sentence about how the museum curator takes a look at the family and is like, oh, like you and your son, hello. And who's this
and you
young
are...
woman? Yeah, that's a like interesting experience I have had when I'm like around with my father.
Yeah, I do want to take a moment on Julius Kane, the father of Carter and Sadie. When I was a kid, I think my first reaction to these first 2 chapters was like, this dad is sick. He is so cool. This is like one of the most like interesting,
lives out of his suitcase like full of secrets.
They describe him as looking like a buff evil scientist. That's an amazing character one-liner.
I feel like I pictured the animated character from Atlantis.
Oh yeah. Oh god. The Doctor. Yeah.
Wait, I'm gonna look it up.
There's a Pokemon professor who I think has gone comparisons to this. I believe it's Professor Kukui, who is supposed to be from Hawaii, who also is giving buff evil scientist.
Dr. Joshua Strong Bear Sweet.
Yeah, him. Yeah. Dr. Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved him.
There is one line in particular that really I think captured my imagination as a child, like describing Carter's like life growing up. I didn't go to school. My dad homeschooled me, if you can call it homeschooling when you don't have a home. He sort of taught me whatever he thought was important. So I learned a lot about Egypt and basketball stats and my dad's favorite musicians. I read a lot too.
Oh, that's so rich.
That really captured my imagination a lot as a kid. I was like, this is an ideal way to grow up.
Yeah.
Why would I learn about things that are not important when I could be learning about cool stuff, seeing the world? You know, very chic.
Yeah, also the idea that everything Carter knows about the world is either from firsthand experience traveling or through just reading fiction books immediately says so much about his personality that then I think is proved in his interactions with the world around him and with his narration that he is kind of quirky. He's a little weird.
He is weird. He's a weird kid.
He's very weird. I was going to say, ironically, I wouldn't even say he was reading fiction books. He's 100% reading nonfiction.
Yeah. Is he reading fiction or is he reading like Ed Yong, An Immense World, and
he's never
The Soul of an Octopus
in his life?
Yeah.
It specifies both. It says dad's history books to fantasy novels.
Yeah, he was reading Lord of the
Rings. He's touched a fiction book, I guess.
Should we talk a little about Sadie then? The introduction of Sadie from Carter's perspective.
Yeah. The choice of putting Carter first, I think, makes a lot of sense, specifically because
he's older.
He's older. I would say that more of his life exists inside of himself as opposed to outside of himself. You know, there are like fewer external clues about like what is going on that he has and Sadie has, who I would say on the other hand is like very richly characterized in this from like the third-person perspective that we get from Carter initially.
Yeah, it's almost like Sadie has main character energy, so Carter has to like describe her first before she can like appear.
It's like giving Andy Sachs and Miranda Priestley where like Carter is the Andy Sachs and Sadie is the Miranda Priestley. You know, like
To
we
be
can
clear,
watch Sadie,
everything
like
gives-
have a shoe pop out.
Everything gives Devil Wears Prada to Carter. Carter can overlay a Devil Wears Prada lens on anything.
It is one of the defining texts, comparative literature.
That is actually pretty accurate as well, because and this is the whole thing, like even the people who love the books, no one loves Carter. It's always
I would
Sadie.
beg to differ from our
I mean,
listener who named her baby after Carter from the Kane Chronicles.
Okay, no, I was going to say there are a few, because I am also a Carter stan. Carter is my boy. He is forever my boy. I am not the biggest fan of Sadie, but I'm okay with that. But, like, every time I talk to someone who, on the rare occasion, I talk to someone who's read Kane Chronicles, it's always Sadie. I'm like, but Carter, he's a little weirdo. He's so cute.
I think, yeah, if you read these books when you're younger, it would be easy to slot Carter into some kind of unfortunate archetypes. Like I think that the way that he interacts with Zia, there's like a particular kind of loserism that we're going to get into later, that for people who just give it passing glances, it feels simple, but I don't think it is. I think there is a richness and a complexity. He has he has a robust inner life, and like weirdos, they will surprise you in ways. He has interesting things about him.
Oh yeah.
14-year-olds who know about jazz should be, I think, respected.
Yeah, I feel like I know Carter.
Yes.
I really do. Carter Kane.
Yeah. It's very much, it's also the additional, like, to go to Devil Wears Prada, it is very much that situation, because we do not know Miranda Priestley. We know the image of Miranda. And that's the same with Sadie. We see Sadie's image. We don't get to know Sadie. We get, like, that whole persona of, like, the usual preteen sort of image of kind of like, I'm way too cool. I have fancy things. I know all that shit. Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, but who are you as a person? At this point, you're just your outfit.
Well, I'm interested to read her perspective now. Like, is she going to, because, you know, I really don't remember reading this book the first time. Is she not going to have as much like self-reflection in her narrative, you know?
I will defend Sadie. I think Sadie gets weird. But I mean, it's a little bit difficult because in these narratives, they're still like, it's second person. She's still like kind of putting on a face because she is performing for you, the listener of the audio tapes.
And she's also performing in front of Carter.
Yes, exactly.
She's
like they like very much like lock into a sibling dynamic where Carter, I think, like deviates less from his general world face with Sadie than Sadie. Like, I think Sadie has more of like an energy that she has when she's with Carter, an energy that she has when she's with specific other people, and then like a generic walls up, I'm gonna be like a cool girl who isn't gonna invest that much energy with most other people, which I think plays out interestingly in the narration. I like it. Sadie reminds me a lot of my sister.
Yeah. Get Nikki back on the pod. Get Nikki back on the pod. I do think we should address, though, like the London punk vibe that she's giving, despite also being 12 years old. That's a slay.
I think we wanted to ask you about this more, Fran. Like, Carter doesn't particularly use slang or, like colorful language that is outside of what you might read in the printed word. Sadie does. How did that land for you? How did you feel about it?
I was offended. It's not as bad as, I've forgotten his name as Dick Van Dyke's Cockney, which was but it was on that level.
Fran, have you seen that Vanity Fair YouTube video where they ask a bunch of British celebrities a bunch of questions and they ask what is the worst British accent ever done, and literally every single person says Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins.
It was terrible.
Okay, to get back to what's going on in the book at this moment in chapter 1. Dad's an Egyptologist, right? And he focuses on like magic, and he lately has been getting like more and more paranoid, and he's been like looking at the image of his dead wife in his wallet a lot and sort of like not answering Carter's questions. So there's lots of spooky vibes going on. After we pick up Sadie, who by the way has like a weird cat who wears an amulet necklace, and that cat most certainly magical, 100%. Gift from their dad, definitely magical. Looking forward to more of the magical cat that looks like a tiny tiger.
Muffin, yeah.
Animal familiar is so important, you know? You can't have like a magician story without like a familiar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Suzume now on Netflix.
Oh my god, Suzume's on Netflix now?
It is.
I think so. Yeah.
It is. I don't know if it's on US Netflix. It's come to UK Netflix. And
Okay.
I saw it last night, like on the television, and I think it was Netflix.
Yeah.
I'm due for a rewatch. It's been like a year now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to see it in cinema. It was just me and one other guy, and then we sat and talked for 15 minutes afterwards in the cinema about the film.
Oh, that's so lovely. Wow.
Aww. So yeah, we pick up Sadie, and Dad has like a weird conversation with someone who like disappears when Carter and Sadie show up. But Dad's getting real shady out here. We go to visit an obelisk, the Needle. Fran, tell us about this landmark.
Cleopatra's Needle.
Yeah, Cleopatra's Needle in London.
It's not like a known thing. Like, unless you're a tourist,
Yeah.
you don't really know about these things. They're kind of just there.
Uh-huh.
It seems consistent with Sadie's relationship to this, which is that she like doesn't think of it as well.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
like, why are we
Somebody
pulled
who
over
lives in
here?
London. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
She's like,
But
this is
here-
regular. Yeah.
We see
But-
we see two people, right? Appear.
we do.
There's a lot of stuff going on. We see two people. This is where we find out, like, Julius is kind of like really out of it and kind of is talking to himself about how this is the last place he saw their mom before she died.
Julius, get it together, King. You're stressing me out. He's having a meltdown.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
not doing great.
Which is something that the kids did not know. Like, the kids did not understand what the significance of this place was until he said that literally just now. He asked them if she still has the cat, if they still have the amulets. It's getting weird.
It's getting weird. Also, their mom's been dead for like quite a while, right?
Yeah,
Since
yeah.
Sadie doesn't really remember her from my
Yeah.
memory, because I think Sadie was like 3 or 4.
Yeah. They do both have amulets of protection, and importantly, we find out it's the Eye of Horus for Carter.
Yes.
Yes, which some people have theorized is where the symbol for RX comes from, but I don't know that that's guaranteed to be true. Chapter 2, we're going to the British Museum. Carter, did you write of Black Panther fame in our outline?
That's how I've heard of it.
Yes.
I hear people also go in real life.
It's also pretty accurate, the presentation of what happens in Black Panther in that scene in the museum. All stolen.
Yeah.
All have been asked to be returned by the people who own them, and the British Museum responded with, "No, we don't trust you. We're gonna keep it." That was an actual news story a few years ago about the fact that the British Museum, they were asked by, I think it was a few places, I think there was one in Nigeria and another in Zimbabwe, I think, asked for specific items that were stolen from them that were put into the British Museum. And the British Museum responded saying, "No, someone's probably going to steal them there, so we'll keep them. Because we don't want to risk history being stolen."
Oh
yeah,
my
Because you don't have
God.
enough
we will
security.
preserve it properly, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no, you're the thief. This is
For all of
pretty
our-
ironic.
If any of our American listeners are listening to this and trying to get cute, you should check on your local museum's policy about the remains of indigenous people, which are literally being held illegally at many museums around America. So some fun.
Same with the Egyptian bodies in the British museums as well. They still have mummies that were bodies stolen from Egypt.
Literal
kept
human
in-
remains.
Yeah, which, not fun fact, because it's disgusting, but the Victorian elite in Britain used to buy mummies' bodies and crush them up to snort as drugs and medicine,
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
including Florence Nightingale.
Wow.
She
Fran,
was
you're
not all
really
she was. Yeah, she's
serving real life British person information here today.
I was going to say, in this section, we get, I think, in the interactions with the director, like this repeated microaggression piece of information about how their family is perceived in the world, but then also some interesting tidbits about the relationship that these 3 different characters have to the Egyptian pantheon, history, mythology, etc., where it's clear that like Julius is like a world-renowned expert. He's not just a professor. He's somebody who like is able to like get an immediate special audience with the head curator of the British Museum. That's a big deal.
And going to be left alone with the
He's going to be left alone with like
unprotected
arguably
Rosetta
the most
Stone.
famous Egyptian artifact. There's that. There is the fact that Carter, as we kind of have gotten some details about, like has a lot of information about Egyptian mythology based on the fact that he's been traveling the world with Julius this whole time. And we get this piece of textual information that Sadie basically doesn't know anything about Egyptian mythology, and also that this is kind of tied up a bit in her relationship with her father, that she sees Egyptian history and archaeology and such as representative of her father's lack of presence in her life. And this is a little bit reading between the lines, but it seems like she has chosen actively to disinvest in learning about these things because she emotionally ties these things to her lack of a relationship with her father.
With her father.
So she doesn't know about Egyptian mythology. which is going to be important information for us to carry forward when, we'll start to have the mythology enter into these characters' lives.
Yeah. But also within this section as well, because when things start happening, she starts reading.
Yes.
Yes.
Interesting introduction of the
weird.
magic system here. Yeah. I also say, just on the fact that we're in the museum, worth noting, this is also how Percy Jackson opens up with us going to the Metropolitan Museum. Yeah. I think it's a great trope. Obviously what Black Panther did with this trope was flip it on its head in many ways.
And we really could have done this at the Met as well, because for those of you who have not been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Upper East Side of New York City, there is a full tomb. There's an entire wing of the museum that is just an Egyptian tomb moved to New York.
The Percy premiere was actually we had to walk through the Egyptian wing in order to get to the screening room.
Yeah. Wild times. Anyway, Julius is getting his one-on-one time with the Rosetta Stone. Explanatory comma maybe on the Rosetta Stone. It's in the book. For those of you who are not familiar, it is not, as Sadie asked, just a software program. It is probably the most famous Egyptian artifact in the world at this point. It's a rock that has the same letter written in 3 different languages. When people were able to prove that it was actually the same letter being written in these 3 different languages, people were able to use it as a way to decode and translate hieroglyphics for the first time in thousands of years. It is housed at the British Museum in real life. We're looking at this artifact. I think, in retrospect, based on what we learn in the future about the lore of how these artifacts are supposed to work in the world, it is kind of a strange choice. It's not necessarily obvious to me why this is the thing that we're starting with, other than that it's very famous.
There is an explanation. It is specifically because of the fact that it's famous, basically. That important symbols are themselves symbols of power and can become portals for it. I think that was
because they're full of cultural significance and therefore magic.
I think that's the explanation that's given, that it has a lot of cultural significance, that it is for the world today. If we're linking the power of Egypt at its heyday to the modern globe today, that it's the most significant artifact. I still feel some of the lore that we're given is focused, I would say, a little bit more on inherent qualities of these objects. We talk a lot about obelisks and pyramids and stuff later on, and they're this is inherently an obelisk is a captured sunbeam, so it is inherently powerful. The Rosetta Stone's power is basically just that it is for modern Westerners a very important way to connect to Egypt, as opposed to something that would have it would not have been valuable or interesting in actual pre-Roman Empire Egyptian civilization. And I don't know if that's entirely lore consistent. To me, it's it's a little bit borderline, but it is how we're beginning. We're going to do some magic on the Rosetta Stone right now.
Yeah. But first we have to go send Carter and Sadie to lock up the museum curator, which they literally do not even remotely reject the idea of. Sadie is literally sounds great, let's do it. And Carter doesn't try to put up a fight or anything, which makes me question how many times his dad has had him do weird shady stuff for him. I think it's very funny that we're just we're just going to go take this bike chain and lock this man in his office.
This to me is giving immediate, precise characterization, in the sense that I don't think it's that Carter is okay with it. It's that he is not a doormat, but almost.
I was going to say he's a follower. That's what I thought
too. He's a follower.
He goes along, especially with whatever his father says. That's what he's used to.
Yes, precisely. Where Sadie is a messy queen who lives for drama.
Yeah, I don't even think Carter has a verbal response when his dad is go lock them up. It's just Sadie being hell yeah, and then they go do it.
Well, we can read from this. Sadie's response is, "You want us to lock him in? Brilliant." Carter's response is, "Dad, what's going on?" And then the dad doesn't answer, and they just both go do it. Sadie, of course, leading, and then Carter just following her down the hallway.
Yeah, but the way that Carter has no objection, Carter's just can I get some details? But then they go and do it anyway. They come back, and of course, Julius is doing what? Doing magic.
Yeah.
Magic time! I love a big glowing blue circle, It really helps us immediately sort of envision what the magic physically looks like in the world. In Percy, we really get the description of the tug at the back of his belly button. And there's a little bit of magic stuff with Hazel, manipulating the mist. But we don't really ever get beams of magic shooting out anywhere or whatever. So this is really fun. The description of what the magic looks like to Carter and Sadie.
And specifically, we should say the father has 2 sticks. One of them is long, one of them is short. One of them is being used to write, and there are these glowing hieroglyphs. And it seems like that is the mechanism of the magic. It is a script-based magic system, which I love. It's sick. Makes sense for, hieroglyphs, which are like very visually striking and cool and interesting and things that not many people would be able to understand. But Sadie immediately does.
Almost in a trance-like state, starts to read what is being written.
I'm living for it.
And then shit hits the fan.
Yes. Right before, like, literally the Rosetta Stone explodes, we get Sadie not just translating what's happening. We're given a clue about what's happening. We see the name Osiris being written out right before the rock explodes.
Sounds like a summoning.
Is it time for an explanatory comma?
Do it.
So Osiris is, in Egyptian mythology, the lord of the afterlife, the underworld, kind of. He is commonly depicted as green, and his foundational story is that he was at one point the pharaoh of Egypt, was killed by his brother, but then is basically reincarnated by his wife and kind of his son. And in that iteration, he becomes green and like rules over the land of the dead. If you like look at the Book of the Dead, which is one of the like more famous like Egyptian mythologic artifacts, I guess. I don't even know if it's right to call it that, because it's a thing that would have like there would have been many copies of this. Like it depicts like the path that you would go through as like a dead person. At the end, what happens is Osiris presides over your judgment and decides what's going to happen, whether or not your like essence, I'm using imprecise language now, is like devoured by this beast, or whether or not you get to like live on well. Anyways, that's Osiris. Mm-hmm. Osiris, king of the underworld, is being summoned.
But he's not who shows up. Ruh-roh.
The stone explodes and the kids are a little bit knocked out, but when they come to, they see that there is this flicker of heat that becomes a fiery outline of a man who is standing over their father.
Who is it? We don't know yet. We technically don't know yet. But this is a great and delightful trope, I would say. When you like open a magic portal trying to summon something and something else comes through, that's great, you know?
Good, tried and true trope. I would agree.
This is how many, I would say, horror movies begin.
Oh, yeah.
And as we get this fiery outline of a man, we have like a whole bunch of lore drop that is not explained. But, we hear a bunch of terms for the first time that we will look forward to having explained to us in the future. I think earlier in these two chapters, we haven't mentioned, there's like a mention of the per-onk. There is a mention of dueling. Here in this language, the duat is dropped. We have a reference to the great king. Julius, the father, says that he has the power of the great king. The demon days are brought up.
There's also, this is a really interesting talk about magic and how we're starting to describe this magical world. This is on page 27. Sadie threw her stone, but it sailed harmlessly through the fiery man's head. He turned, and for one terrible moment, his face appeared in the flames. What I saw made no sense. It was as if someone had superimposed two different faces on top of each other. One almost human, with pale skin, cruel angular features, and glowing red eyes. The other like an animal with dark fur and sharp fangs, worse than a dog or a wolf or a lion. Some animal I'd never seen before. Those red eyes stared at me, and I knew I was going to die. Ooh! Ooh!
For people who have some baseline knowledge about Egyptian mythology, I think this is a question that you might have had coming into this book, which is that a lot of Egyptian mythologic figures are portrayed kind of interchangeably as specific animals, or as humans, or as like humans with the heads of those animals. You might have been wondering, how is Rick going to handle that? How is that going to be described? This is perhaps an answer, perhaps a way of looking into how we're going to think about those depictions and relationships. Mm-hmm. He's basically saying it's like juxtaposed. You're seeing both versions at the same time, which is sick, which is cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. This is basically Julius is going down. He's going downtown.
Locked in a magic coffin and poofed away.
A magic coffin that starts to like solidify in gold around him, and then he drops down into the ground, like as though the ground became water. Oh, that was so cool. The magic, I'm just so here for the magic. I love the magic. I'm realizing how little magic we have in Percy Jackson now.
It's true. It's very, the vibes are very different. And it's not just that Julius is sinking through. Right before he finishes sinking through, the fiery outline of a man refers to him as Osiris, the, like godly king who we haven't, like we knew that Osiris was being summoned. And like Julius also has made reference to the fact that he has the power of the great king. Mm-hmm. This is, I think, our first window into how the gods operate in this world.
Yes.
Which is that it seems like Osiris and Julius are at the moment somehow closely interlinked or the same
Yes.
person, or like one is occupying the other's body or something to that effect. Like you would use the same interchangeably refer to Julius as Julius or Osiris in this context.
Which is great because at the top of the page, we get that goodbye Osiris. And then at the bottom of this page, the fiery man tries to lunge towards Carter. The air sparked with electricity. The amulet around my neck grew uncomfortably hot. The fiery man hissed, regarding me more carefully. So, it's you. Which then makes us think, okay, is there something else operating at the same time? Like in the body of Carter? Or has Carter maybe met this figure before? This is very spooky, ooky, incredible hook for the start of this book. And then the two people from the Needle appear. Dude with the forked beard, girl in blue. And that's kind of the last thing that Carter remembers before everything erupts into flames.
Yeah. Except for two features. The man has a French accent, which means he's automatically Sadie's enemy.
He's evil.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's evil.
Yeah. And two, the girl in blue put a knife to Carter.
Oh yeah, he seems like a loser. I'm already, he's an op. I'm not looking forward to him. She, on the other hand, queen. We're excited.
Already
see what
obsessed
she's
with her? Literally, she has done nothing yet, and I'm already obsessed with her.
She's shown up and immediately like tried to murder our main character. That's queen behavior.
Yeah, okay, I guess that is the one thing she's done that has made me obsessed with her. Also, she's all in blue. That's powerful. I'm picturing robes, you know? I'm picturing it.
She knows how to power block. Color block.
Power color block. Okay, so that's the end of our first 2 chapters. We're going to do the next 2 chapters next week, and then we might switch to 4 chapters at a time, just so we can do the comparative Carter and Sadie in like a single episode. But this is a fun introduction to both of their characters on their own. And we're going to start to think of some closing questions that we want to discover the answers to together with our guests as we read the Kane Chronicles. But for now, Fran, because we're still trying to bring people along on this ride with us, will you pitch to people why they should read the Kane Chronicles?
Okay. All right.
Crack your knuckles.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone should read the Kane Chronicles because it is everything a series about a sibling dynamic should be. It is the sort of series that interweaves magic and coming together and familial bonding, and it's the found family trope. It is everything Heroes of Olympus wishes it could be. It is a flawed series. I would never say it's perfect, but for what it is perfect in its own way, solely because of Carter and Sadie, because they themselves are imperfect. And what is more perfect than an imperfect main characters?
Love it. Yay! Yay! Well, thank you for helping us kick off the first couple chapters of the Red Pyramid, Fran. Can you promote for people? I think your show's on a hiatus, right?
Yeah, Best Time Camp is on a hiatus, but I am doing some stuff on YouTube still, mainly related to my books, but I also have books out, so if you like Tarzan Found Family with Lesbians, or a Celtic mythology series about a girl with anger issues, which is coming out this year, check out my stuff. My website is francescamcmahon.com, or you can find my stuff at A Dose of Fran on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads apparently now as well.
Yay! All right, we will see y'all next time for chapters 3 and 4 of the Red Pyramid.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye.